Today we're going to factor trinomials by first factoring out a GCF, a greatest common factor. So here's your learning target. You will factor a trinomial by first identifying and factoring out a greatest common factor, then factor the remaining trinomial completely. Two essential questions today. When is a trinomial completely factored? And when, if ever, is it not possible to factor trinomials into two binomials? So in this example, we start with a trinomial, but I can see that there's a variable p in all three terms. In fact, all three terms have p to the third power, which I will factor out. Now that trinomial that's inside the parentheses, that can be factored into two binomials. And I'm basically asking what two numbers multiply to equal 12, but add together to equal 13. And that's going to be 12 and 1. And there's my fully factored form of the original trinomial. Do you see what's common to all three terms in this trinomial? A 6n squared. Now take a look at the trinomial inside parentheses. And to factor it, you're looking at the -2. What numbers multiply to equal -2, but add together to equal -1? It's -2 and +1, right? And there's your factored form. Two more examples. Okay, this is an interesting style problem because at first glance it does not look like there's a common factor that you can take out of all three terms. But with trinomials, we always want the leading coefficient to be positive. And there's a negative in front of the r squared. So we're going to factor out a -1. And when we do, notice the sign of all three terms has become the opposite. And now, inside the parentheses, I have my positive coefficient, so I can factor. And I'm finished. So please remember, we want a positive leading coefficient. And sometimes that means you're going to have to factor a negative number out of the trinomial. So what can be factored out of all three terms here? Is there a number and/or a variable? So they're all negative, so let's factor out a -5 for sure, and d. And now what numbers multiply to equal 4 and add together to equal 5? 4 and 1. And we're finished. Let's summarize. You always want to check for a GCF among the three terms of the trinomial. If there is a GCF, factor it out. And then use any convenient strategy to factor the remaining trinomials.